guys, Hailey, Lain, aka Key Black here, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Cuff. And today, we'll be diving right back into Yu-Gi-Oh! It's been a little while. I've been really enjoying some of these other retro animes I've been dipping my toes into. G-Gundam is fantastic, Rurouni Kenshin's been fun, Inuyasha's been really fun too. But a friend of mine told me that this coming weekend, I'm recording this on May the 6th for context, this coming weekend in San Antonio, Texas will be one of the first full cast 4Kids voice actor get-togethers for the English dub of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I've mentioned before I grew up on as my first introduction to the series, and so I'm like, I'm definitely going to that. I'll report back once I've actually been to the event. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But because of that, I've really been jonesing for like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga and everything. It's like the dub's fun, the dub's like, it's very funny and very lighthearted, but the real meat is in the manga. And I think I left off previously just before one of my favorite mini arcs, which is the Evil Dragon cards. This is another one of those fun ones for me because I think I always liked the high stakes, like supernaturally creepy stuff in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Imori, he's the one-off villain for this arc, and he is a one-off villain, but he's really wonderfully creepy. This chapter always just stuck out in my memory, and I guess, I don't know, I guess that has something to do with why. You know, it's kind of like he's a more depressing, creepier version of Yugi. It's funny, as I'm reading through this chapter again, I'm realizing like, oh, I guess this is what might have happened if Yugi hadn't been a total sweetheart, if he had actually, you know, wanted the powers of darkness instead of, I wish for friends. So that's kind of what Imori is, this creepy little guy who actually wants to be like some dark avenger and to be the guardian of the shadows, but I'm getting very much ahead of myself. The chapter basically opens with Imori coming in with this ancient game to Sugoroku's Kame game shop, where Yugi and Anzu and Jinochi are all looking at some ancient Egyptian games that Sugoroku has on display. Imori has this ancient game called the Dragon Card. Sugoroku immediately recognizes it as, you better not open that seal, kid, because that game is cursed as hell. Long story short, he opens the seal. Turns out Imori, despite Yugi's initial thought of like, oh, you know, I don't really talk to this kid very much, but maybe now's my chance to make friends with him. Imori has apparently had his eye on Yugi for a while and very much intends to steal his Millennium Puzzle and take his place as the guardian of the Shadow Games. So he does exactly that. While Yugi's off at PE, Imori takes the puzzle and leaves a threatening note in Yugi's locker saying, you better come, you know, fight me in dragon cards or else, you know, the puzzle's mine. So Yugi does it. He comes to where Imori has summoned him into a classroom. Imori's acting like a little creepazoid. He's like, see, doesn't it look so much better on me as he's got the puzzle around his neck? No, it doesn't. It looks terrible on you, Imori. It's really unnerving. But then he goes into like, you could say I look up to you, Yugi. I really envy you. And he kind of does this little explanation of what the dragon cards are, this ancient Chinese game that uses the forces of feng shui or something like that. I don't really understand feng shui, so I'm not really sure, but it's like the 5 elements of, you know, Chinese mythology or something like that. And the way the game works is basically you collect you can collect multiple cards to match one particular kind of dragon at a certain level, and once you do, you can summon that dragon, and each player summons 2 dragons, and they pit them against each other, and, you know, they're basically kind of playing in a pseudo-shadow realm. I know that's not a real thing in the manga, but, you know, that's basically what it is. At any rate, you know, the rules are kind of cool that way. It seems very mind gamey. You know, you kind of have to read your own, not only your own cards, but also your opponent's hand based on what they draw and discard. But unfortunately, Imori handily defeats little Yugi, and the punishment for losing this game is to lose your soul to the Dragon Jar. So this happens, and this leads to one of my favorite moments in this chapter where, like, just before the dragon reaches into Yugi's chest, and I love the art for this, it's horrifying. I have to pause. Yugi's expression when he loses his soul, I don't know, it's terrifying. I love it. It's so well done. This is just something that Takahashi's always fantastic with. Not only, like, is his art amazing, not only is his paneling amazing, but just the expressions. Like, if you're reading through this, you kind of feel it in your gut when something horrific like this happens. But anyways, just before Yugi loses his soul to the dragon cards, he shoots his arm out and he grabs the Millennium Puzzle from Imori. And I remember reading this for the first time, like, yeah, that's so freaking cool. But then there's this great sequence of panels, and it's very short. It's not nearly as dramatic as it was in the Death Tea Saga reveal, of course. It doesn't really need to be, I guess. But there's this great framing where you see the other Yugi awaken as he's just managed to get his hand on the Millennium Puzzle, and then he immediately challenges Imori to a rematch. And the rematch, there's, it's another of the games. The other Yugi, of course, wins this one. He summons 2 different kinds of dragons. Imori, does the same. I was gonna kind of skip over what actually happens in this battle, but it's actually kind of cool because the other Yugi's 2 dragons, Imori is very skilled at this game. Like, he has his strategies and everything in check, but the other Yugi pulls a really interesting maneuver as well, where his 2 dragons support each other in a really unconventional way. One is able to basically free the other to attack and, take advantage of the weakened dragons on Imori's side of the field. It's really cool. The metal dragon sacrifices himself in this really dramatic move, and the earth dragon is the one that remains victorious as he, shatters the ground and the water dragon falls into it. It's really cool. The art is fantastic. I like these bizarre dragon designs. Takahashi once again with the monster designs, man. Like, I haven't really seen stuff like this in anything else. I just love his monster designs. They're so good. The chapter basically ends on the other Yugi retrieving his soul from the monster jar. Imori freaking dies. Imori's soul takes Yugi's place in the jar. Yugi's soul is released back into the other Yugi. And there's this really sweet panel as the other Yugi's going, thank goodness I got my soul back. I have to back up because the other Yugi's... Every time the other Yugi wins a game, right, he has his penalty game. And I have no idea if this is in the original Japanese version of the manga, but the English translation from Viz has this hilarious blurb. He says, Imori, here's your penalty game. Normally, I try to come up with something original, but now it's your turn to feed your soul to ravenous dragons. What? It's sassy, I love it. But yeah, there's just something fun about these chapters. I like these high stakes ones where like one of the 2 Yugis is in mortal danger while the other Yugi is desperately trying to get him back. And it doesn't really matter which Yugi is which. Like, this happens a couple of times throughout the series and they're all just so much fun. It's like, this is the highest stakes it could possibly get. Yes, give me more of this stuff. And also, the added horror elements. I love that stuff. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening and for watching. As I read this again, I also just realized the next chapter is another one of the really hype ones from the early manga, so I'm excited to get to Jinochi against his former gang friends once again. So guys, thanks again, and I will see you in the next Off the Cuff.